let's help you get some ideas about what to do for your children's story. All right, so go ahead and get out your writer's notebook. And in it, you should have a page, which we created in school, that's called What I Notice About Children's Stories. And some of these things you might have already seen on the wall that we created, and you might have them in there, and that's fine. But I've put them into two different categories. So as we're going along, you might want to highlight all the ones you see here, which are one category, which are basically elements of your story, things you can include in your story. And if you want to highlight them all in one color, that would be fine. Maybe you don't have to create a new page, but if you're creating a new page, you can go ahead and separate them. And to begin with, one of the things we noticed is that children's stories are very simple. The concepts often, the words almost always, unless it's a book that's designed for parents to read to the kids. Sometimes there's more complex words. But the characters are very simple. They're one-dimensional. They don't have a lot of complexity to them. So you'll want everything in your children's story to be as simple as possible. We see a lot of personification in children's stories where things that normally don't do people-like activities, such as riding motorcycles and talking and going to work and arguing with their children and all those things, happen in children's stories. So you'll probably want to put that in there. Oh, by the way, later on we'll talk about which of these are required and which of these are suggested. Okay, I might say it now, but we'll see. Anyway, many children's stories have lots of personification, even inanimate objects, rocks and trees. They will take on life and talk and do things like that. So, pretty common. Many children's stories have a moral or a lesson. If you cry wolf 3 times or twice, then the third time you cry it, your sheep are going to get eaten. Sorry. Children's stories have a clear, good protagonist. This person's always good. Always trying to do the right thing. Always trying to help people. And that's because it's a story for children, right? You don't want to see protagonists that occasionally go off and smoke in the garage or something like that. It doesn't happen. At the same time, there's always an antagonist. Now, maybe Swiper's not perfect because sometimes he gives things back to Dora. But it is a children's story, so that's okay. However, there's going to be someone or something that the hero, your protagonist, has to struggle against. I can't think of a better happy ending than Cinderella, right? Children's stories must have a happy ending, okay? She gets the prince. The glass slipper fits. Life goes on for her, unless you've seen the other sequels. But anyway, in the Cinderella story, and that's why they call happy endings Cinderella stories, right? There you go. And then occasionally, embedded in children's stories, there are teachable moments. In this little story, the fox takes some time to pick up some trash that he sees on the way. Has nothing to do with the story, but it's going to tell kids, hey, look, if you see trash on the ground, you should pick it up. So maybe your story has a teachable moment in there or two. And then a lot of children's stories are based on fairy tales and nursery rhymes. There are many, many renditions of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Many, many renditions of The Three Little Pigs and the Wolf and stories like that, where sometimes it's taken from the bear's perspective. We can see some personification here. Anyway, it's okay to take a famous story and turn it around a little bit. In 3rd grade, we read a little book, The Three Javelinas, or something like that. There's one where it's from the standpoint of the wolf. I just read Goldilocks and the Three Bears. No, what did I read? Oh, anyway, I read another one. It's My Little Pony or something like that. Oh, it's the grandmother one, Little Red Riding Hood with My Little Pony, and instead of being eaten, they share a picnic with the wolf or something like that. So you can even take a pretty dark little story where someone gets eaten at the end and make it completely different so it's a happy ending. Now on to the second category. These are the words themselves. You have a lot of choices about what you're going to do for the words that are going to be in your story. Does your story have to rhyme? That's totally up to you. It can, doesn't have to, all right? Here's an example of one that has some easy rhyme on there, but once again, your choice. Alliteration, very common in children's stories. Here's the title of a book, Some Smug Slug. All starts with S. Very often, characters' names will be alliterated, like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and Donald Duck. So you can do that if you wish. Even Roger Rabbit, more modern ones. Very, very, very common, if I said that, with the names of your characters. And then you can have onomatopoeia, which is when the words themselves sound like the action that they're doing, like kaboom and woom and fwoosh. Shwoom, I like that one. That's a cool word. And by the way, you can make up words in a children's story. A lot of these are made up words. You won't find them in the dictionary. Speaking of made up words, who's more famous for that? Dr. Seuss makes up all kinds of words. And why does he do that? Because maybe it's easy to rhyme when he does that. Tobsk, Nobsk, Obsk, I don't know. But it's okay for you to make up words. We already talked about simple, right? And the other side. Simple words could be in there too. And don't forget, you can do the big three. 3 wolves, 3 pigs. You can repeat things 3 times. Children's stories often have things in threes. So words, characters, anything like that can be in 3. You can also do fancy script, where maybe the first letter of the sentence is a very fancy letter and it's got all sorts of drawings inside it. That's pretty common. And while we're talking about that, you can manipulate your fonts a little bit. And later on, when you see the program we're going to use to make our children's stories, you'll see how easy that's going to be. But it doesn't have to be the same old boring script, line after line after line. Definitely you can manipulate that. So, take out your short story outline. We began talking about this in class. Maybe you started writing down some things, but if not, now's the time to do it. Focus on the concepts, the theme. What do you want to teach? What do you want the kids to learn? Is there going to be a moral or a lesson? There should be. So maybe start there. And then perhaps think about your protagonist. Is it going to be a fluffy little bunny or a real person? Who knows? What are they going to be struggling against? Who are they going to be struggling against? Where are your settings going to take place? Think about the exposition of the story. What are they doing in the beginning? Conflict's going to come right away. What's it going to be? Easy to come up with some rising action once you have a good conflict. And then if you just want to make a second and third point of rising action, that's fine. If you want to follow the simple story pattern and do a complication after the rising action, and then some suspense where it may not work out, that's okay too. But you can just make them 1, 2, and 3 points if that's what you wish. Your conflict is going to be resolved in the climax, like all the stories we've been talking about. There's going to be falling action, and you know that your resolution is going to be the happy ending, all right? So begin to just jot some ideas down in here. And you've got one of these story outlines on each side of the paper, so you can either outline 2 stories to see which one you like better as you're going along, or if you're working on yours and it just isn't working, flip the page over and start over with something entirely different, all right? And if you get stuck with any of these things, talk to a writing partner. And if that doesn't help, talk to me, talk to someone else in the group. Figure out some ways to make your story complete. Put all these elements in there, and good luck.